Dominique, we talked about this before. You were asking about Brussels sprouts. I oftentimes don't cover Brussels sprouts so much because they're one of those crops that take up a little bit more room. They take a long time to come in. They take over 100 days usually to mature, and so I generally don't grow them in small spaces because I just don't want to wait that long for a crop. But the spacing on the Brussels sprouts, I would say 18 inches minimum, 24 inches is recommended. And as they grow, the way to keep them in a small space is you'll see here all the Brussels sprouts are on the stem. And what you want to do is pull off the leaves as this plant grows vertically to help the plant keep producing some of those little cabbage heads or those Brussels sprout heads. You send the growth into those heads by pulling off the leaves as the plant grows vertically. And as an expected yield, a lot of people see between 2 to 3 pounds per plant. So I hope that helps with Brussels sprouts. And Dominique, you also have this question about, I'm not sure where you saw it. I would love to know where you read this. She read that Brussels sprouts want to be planted 10 feet away from any cabbage-like plant. So I would love to know where you read that so I understand why somebody said that. The thing about growing any kind of crop near any other kind of crop that's similar is all the pests and diseases are the same. And Brussels sprouts, I'm told, and I don't know how true this is, but because the crop is in the ground for much, much longer and you're not pulling off and cleaning the stem off, think about how many places there are for aphids and other bugs to get caught up and little worms to get caught up in that stem of that Brussels sprout. And how many times have you brought Brussels sprouts back from the farmer's market and there's been lots of little worms inside of them? This has happened to me all the time. And I think it's because the crop is in the ground for so long, there's lots of incidents for the pests to build up, and there's no cleaning off of the plant the same way that you're cleaning off a kale plant or cleaning off a collard plant. So that might be why somebody's saying don't grow this within 10 feet of any other cabbage-like plant, because this is going to be a trap crop for a lot of different pests. So that might be what's going on. And if you have a source where you read that, I would love to know where that is. Okay, so Dominique is on the webcast, and she says, okay, so thanks for addressing the spacing. To make sure I understand, in biointensive, you space, for example, 2 kale 12 inches apart, but in between those 2 and around them, you may plant some carrots, provided they are planted 2 inches apart, or you plant 2 plants that need to be spaced 6 inches apart. Is that correct? Is it recommended? Okay, so, and then also, is it recommended to plant a patch with only kale, another with chard, etc., instead of mingling them together? Okay, so let me address the kale. So yes, so if you have 2 kale plants, you want them 12 inches apart. And then in between them, yes, you can put in some other crops. And I have not done carrots in between kale. It's a possibility. I would say, I mean, those 2 plants have large-ish root systems, and so it may not work as well. It might, the carrots, you might not be able to get a lot of carrots in that space because all of those root systems are pretty large. But if you were to say plant radish or turnip, they might be a little bit smaller in terms of root systems. And let me verify about turnips, because there are lots of different varieties of turnips. I guess I'm talking about the very small little, Hakurei or the little white turnips versus the really large, globe turnips. So if you plant your kale 12 inches apart, I think one of the best crops that you could probably intercrop would be some lettuces would be really effective in between, because they would benefit a little bit from the shade, and then they would be able to have smaller root systems. The other crop, you might want to do some kind of herb, would be the other crop. Maybe you do some cilantro in between, or something that, likes a little bit of shade. That would be another way to go. And when you are, so let's say you do try to intercrop your carrots with your kale, which I'm not I'm not sure how good it would work, but it'd be a fun experiment. So if your kale is 12 inches apart, then you have these, you could plant like a row of carrots at that 6-inch mark and then plant them 2 inches apart and see how they do. My gut says they might not get that big, but it would be a really fun experiment. So I hope that helps. And keep writing in if you want me to clarify something else. And your question, is it recommended to plant a patch with only kale, another with chard, etc.? I personally like to intercrop as much as I can. Most of the time when I'm intercropping, I'm trying to fit in some of the smaller crops like celery, lettuce, and the choys or the mustard greens. I'm trying to like sneak those in wherever I can. Oftentimes I will do a couple rows of my root crops like you've seen in the crop plan that I sent you guys, where I've got my cucumbers on a trellis and then I grow a lot of my root crops along the base of that trellis away from the cucumbers and let the cucumbers go up. With the exception that I do like to thin out the lower branches of my tomatoes and have as an understory the garlic from the previous season and then a row of carrots as well. So I generally do like to intermingle quite a bit, and I think it's beneficial. You can really pack a lot in that way. The benefit to not intermingling at all is that your crop rotations can be a little bit easier because you don't have so many different families in the same bed at once. But like I said, if you make sure that your curcubits are in a bed in one season separate from your tomato family, and then in another bed separate from your cabbage family, those are the 3 crop families that I would recommend having dedicated beds each year and then rotating them so that you don't ever grow those crops in the same place until 3 years down the road. And that'll really help your pest and disease management and keep the disease factor low. So what that means is the other crops are the crops that get intercropped in, the root crops, beetroots, peas, and legumes, basically. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, last question from Dominique about the transplants. She was saying she has her transplants in the ground. Can I still move them around to adjust the spacing? Will it damage them? So you can move your transplants around if they've been in the ground for less than 2 weeks, I would say. At about 2 weeks, what happens is that they've really acclimated to where they are, and the root structure has finally really taken on a new life of its own, and then it's a little bit harder. Not to say it's impossible, but I would say within 2 weeks you definitely can move them around. And what you want to do is make sure you take your trowel and dig pretty far away from the plant so that you make sure you grab the whole root ball. The less roots that you interrupt, the better off you are in terms of replanting it and it taking off again. So you can do it. This is where I would be a little bit more cautious than when you transplanted them in the first place. I would take as much of that root structure as possible and move it over.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And for more simple and practical gardening tips, subscribe to Grow Your Own Vegetables. For more tips and updates, visit gyov.org and join our growing community.